Here we go.
Great.
Welcome everyone to this new episode of All Roads Lead to ETHRome, the first Web3 international hackathon happening in Italy in just 2 weeks and centered on governance and privacy. This episode in particular is featuring different friends from Waku and Status. Waku is not only the main sponsor of the hackathon, and we are not just thrilled to share this journey with them, but also honored. You've been working hard on privacy development on network level since many years, and with a great approach, aiming at delivering value and useful building blocks instead of just following trends or money like others. So thank you to be here today with us. Today we have Hanno Vaclav from Status and Sasha from Waku. Please feel free to introduce yourself and give a brief introduction of Waku, so that we can start talking about your tooling, technologies, and giving some insights for the hackers to join the battle.
Cool. I will go ahead and just introduce myself, and then after everyone has introduced themselves, I will do a quick presentation of what Waku is, and just to introduce some of the basic concepts to lay the foundation for the rest of our conversation. Yes, so I'm Hanno. I've been working with Waku for the last 3 years, and I'm part of Waku Research. And at Waku Research, we're really aiming to look at the existing protocols that we have and how to best use them to solve complex problems in the space, and also setting the direction in which we want these set of protocols to go into to solve the hard problems of the environment.
I can go next. So I'm Václav. I'm with Waku for almost 6 months. It feels it's interesting in the team and the project when so much is happening. It feels longer. Everyone was saying that when I joined, that they feel like they've been there for a long time, and I can say after almost 6 months that I feel like I've been there way longer. I'm part of the Waku team, the name implementation, the reference implementation of Waku. So we're trying to follow all the RFCs coming from the research team and wherever else, and trying to be the most feature complete implementation of Waku. Sasha.
Hey, my name is Sasha. So I'm doing GS Waku side of things, and I am doing this almost for a year soon, and quite happy with how good team is. Everyone is so eager to crack the hard problems, and this is a really nice place to be. And we have a especially interesting problem to crack everything but in browser environment. So.
Cool.
Yeah, so Hanno.
Yeah. I'll go ahead.
You have something to show us. Yeah.
I do. Let me just share my screen here. Let me know if you can't see any transitions here, but I think it should be fine. Yes, I prepared a couple of slides just to introduce the idea of Waku, right? So Waku really is this infrastructure project building the messaging pillar for Web3. And when I say messaging pillar here, I'm referring to this historical concept of this original vision for Web3, which was the Holy Trinity for Web3. So people wanted decentralized consensus, decentralized storage, and decentralized messaging. So for decentralized consensus, we're really at Ethereum taking that role. Decentralized storage, in the beginning we had Swarm, and mostly this was later replaced by IPFS. But decentralized messaging didn't get much attention. So we had Whisper protocol there as the main decentralized messaging protocol, but it wasn't really widely used, except by an application called Status. And Status wanted to develop a decentralized communications app and tried to use Whisper for this purpose, and very quickly realized that there were some fundamental limitations to the protocol that had to be addressed in order to make it practically useful. Specifically, it wasn't really scalable, and it was incompatible with resource-restricted devices, such as mobile phones. And Waku was really born out of a desire to improve the Whisper protocol. So Dran mentioned just before we went live that Waku, the first version of Waku, was just a fork of Whisper protocol with some added optimizations for mobile devices. But really, the Waku version that we are talking about nowadays is a completely new set of protocols that rethinks the entire protocol stack and thinks about properties such as privacy preservation and scalability to work in a variety of environments. Right, so Waku functions therefore as a suite or as a family of protocols, as I've mentioned, aimed at providing privacy-preserving decentralized communications. Right? And when we say about what principles we design according to, I have highlighted 4 here. We have more than 4, but I think these 4 are important to highlight a little bit our design philosophy when it comes to thinking about these protocols. Right? The first one here is privacy preservation. So if you think about the kind of infrastructure we want to build, we want to enable truly open societies, right? We want to enable freedom of expression. This means that our infrastructures, our protocols, need to operate in potentially very hostile environments. It needs to be robust against very powerful adversaries, like global passive adversaries. And for that reason, you really can't compromise on privacy and security. And in Waku, when we design protocols, we do it with privacy and anonymity in mind. We think of features such as sender anonymity, of receiver anonymity. We think of metadata protection, things like conversational security. So this really is a design principle for us. The decentralized here is quite obvious, I think. Well, I mean, we're talking about peer-to-peer here. But I think what's important to emphasize again is that oftentimes when we speak about peer-to-peer infrastructure, there's a tendency towards centralization in certain aspects, right? You might have some decentralization in terms of routing, so that would be good. So you can have decentralized message routing, but then tend to centralize in other aspects, maybe in your discovery protocols, maybe in how you do spam protection. And with Waku, we try and be conscious of thinking about decentralization in every step of the way. So another aspect here I think that's important is modularity. I will go into that a little bit more in detail in a next slide. The main idea here is that we want to think of Waku as building blocks that people can use to really make it work for their environment. Again, this goes back to a principle or an ethos of open participation. If we say we want open participation, it means the protocols need to work even in very restricted environments. And for that, you need to be able to configure the part of the protocol that you really need and that makes your application work. So that's modularity. Another aspect which is quite important is generalized messaging. What I mean with that is oftentimes when people ask us about Waku, they ask, well, is Waku a chat application? The answer to that is no, it's not a chat application. It's an infrastructure that also enables chat applications. But we are not biased towards specific application, right? We try and make it as easy as possible to develop applications on top of Waku communications applications. But we're really trying to enable communications of a wide variety, human to human, machine to machine, a combination, and to be agnostic on that infrastructure layer towards that application. We also don't introduce any concept that will tie us to a specific environment. Say things like Ethereum wallet addresses. We don't introduce that in the Waku layer, even though you can build applications on top of Waku using them. I have here just a small subset of some of the protocols to give some idea of how it all can fit together. Really the heart of the Waku protocol suite is this one in the middle called Waku Relay. This is our main routing protocol. This describes how messages get delivered in a peer-to-peer network. And this is basically a thin layer on top of libpeer-to-peer's gossip sub, right? We add some privacy extensions to that and add a payload definition, but generally it is very close to libpeer-to-peer's gossip sub. On top of that, we think of what features might be desirable to make such a communications network work. If you want a memory inside your network, so say you want some history to be kept in the network so that if a node goes offline and comes back online, it can request the historical messages that it has missed. That node can use store protocol to request this from the network. We have a bunch of protocols to allow resource-restricted devices, such as mobile phones, or even more restricted, to communicate on the network. Filter and Lightpush are two protocols that are examples of this. It allows nodes to both receive messages from the network and publish to the network, but without having to fully participate as relay nodes. Of course, I think in any peer-to-peer network, you need to build on a strong discovery domain so that you have rich connectivity, varied connectivity. So that's why we also have a strong emphasis on the discovery domain. Yeah, how does this all fit together in a network, right? So what does a typical Waku network topology look like? In Waku, we have this concept of adaptive nodes. This really ties back to the concept of modularity that I mentioned earlier. And it comes down to the fact that we see nodes as a continuum, right? We don't really see it as a binary of full nodes or light nodes. It's a continuum of nodes with more resources to nodes with less resources or fewer resources. The more resources a node have, the more it can use these protocols and configure more protocols that provide services to the network, depending on their own motivations as well. Or a node can configure and pick and choose the protocols in a way that works within a more restricted environment, right? So you end up with a network, a very heterogeneous network of a very diverse sets of nodes, all communicating in a privacy-preserving manner using Waku. And I think one example that we're quite excited about of the very hard problems that you have to solve, right? And that ties in together all of these concepts that I mentioned, these design aims of privacy preservation, of decentralization. It all comes together in how we approach something like spam protection in the network. And this is particularly relevant. I saw a video clip from Vitalik, I think yesterday or the day before, where he was speaking about the history of decentralized communications. He was speaking about Waku specifically here, and about the challenges of finding a suitable successor for Whisper, and specifically the challenge of providing spam protection or DOS protection in a decentralized network. And how we have solved this problem in Waku is with this concept called RLN, or RLN, rate limiting nullifiers. It's a concept we've been working on with the privacy and scaling explorations group of the EF. And the basics of how it functions, right, is that a publisher who wants to publish to the Waku network would have to register some kind of membership in a contract, potentially lock away some stake, whether financial stake, it can be reputational stake as well. And then when this publisher wants to publish to the network, they attach a proof to every message that they send. And this proof contains a proof that they belong to this membership set and that they are not exceeding some pre-agreed rate limit for publishing to the network, right? So the network might be configured to only allow one message per second for every publisher or participant in the network. And you would have to attach a proof to every message that you're not exceeding this rate limit. Also include a share of your secret key as part of every message. But essentially, there is no linkable identity. So privacy is completely preserved. This is completely decentralized. But as soon as you start spamming the network, so you send more than the pre-agreed rate limit, other nodes in the network can act as validators. They can detect that you're spamming the network. They can reconstruct your secret key and slash your membership and potentially your stake as well. Yeah, and we're excited about this because this is a concept that we've been working on for a while, and it's worked in kind of experimental environments for quite some time. But we are about ready now. I think it's advanced at the point where we can really go live with this in a production environment very, very soon. In fact, one of our researchers just published some key benchmarks here from experiments done in a very production-like environment, and things like the proof generation time, the proof validation times, everything now is within margins that's more than acceptable for actual production use cases. So keep an eye out for this in the production environment very, very soon. Yeah, I think that concludes a kind of a basic introduction to some of the Waku concept. This, I'm sure we'll be able to share these links at a later stage as well. So we'll stop sharing my screen now. But yeah, that's Waku.
Super cool, guys. Like, yeah, it's been super clear. And I have a question. I don't know, PG, if you have any question ready, those to share before I go ahead.
Go on. Feel free.
Yeah, because like also facing your documentation and like privacy messaging services or infrastructures in your case, I know that there is this topic related to the anonymity trilemma, right? So the problem with that, of course, like the decentralization issues, the same framework could be addressed also to privacy. So latency, privacy, and the scalability of the network. Like, according to you, how Waku is facing this problem, and how is solving it, or maybe what's your consideration about why other projects different from Waku are failing on this problem here?
Yes, so I think one way to think about anonymity and privacy here as well is to think about it as kind of like modular properties, right? So at a base layer, Waku tries to find the trade-off between these three things: the bandwidth, the latency. So you want to minimize bandwidth, you want to minimize latency, and you want to maximize anonymity, right? We want to find at a base layer some kind of compromise here that makes sense for most environments, right? So the Waku relay protocol that I mentioned provides anonymity in that it is a kind of broadcast environment. So you have this idea of K-anonymity. K-anonymity, I think I've heard again from Sisma explain it on the call a couple of weeks ago, as if you say I have blue eyes, right? I mean, you're not giving away that much, right? Because you're part of such a large set of people. And a lot of the base layer anonymity in Waku relies on this, right? So messages don't contain any linkable information to the origin of the messages. So there's no signing or any pseudonymity even attached to that message. And messages are also delivered in a broadcast manner, so that it's impossible to know who the intended recipient is unless you're the recipient yourself, right? So that provides, I guess, on the receiver side, it provides quite a good amount of anonymity. On the sender side, it provides okay anonymity, except you can think about it as the fact that you will be more vulnerable in that first hop in the network, right? So you might be sending the message as originator to the closest 20 people around you, or 20 nodes around you. But I mean, if with some correlation, if you're quite a powerful adversary and you're quite well placed in the network, you might try and correlate kind of what is the actual originator of the messages, right? So then you can think about, okay, so how can we think about these other properties, latency and bandwidth, and maybe compromise a little bit on these if I have a more specific use case, and provide stronger anonymity across this first hop, right? So maybe what you can do is you can use the first hop can be over some kind of mixnet, right? So Opera or something similar, or NIM. And that would, depending on the kind of the type of mixnet that you're using, or you can use Dandelion, for example, can add latency to your first hop, but you get better anonymity, or it can add more bandwidth because you add several layers around it. And yeah, so that is how we will think about it in terms of the routing protocol, right? If you think about the other protocols that we design, every time you are faced with the same trilemma trade-offs, right? Maybe we have some request response protocol. So if you want, you have a very resource restricted device, you're only interested in a small subset of messages in the network, you can request a node that has full access to the network to send only a subset of messages to you. But then you have to choose, do I want to divulge exactly which messages I'm interested in, which potentially would be quite a de-anonymizing action to do, or do I want to also use a kind of like a wider set? But the trade-off is, again, that I will use more bandwidth because I will ask for a whole bunch of messages, and secretly I'm only interested in like a small subset of those. And yeah, so this plays a role, I think, in every protocol that we build. And we're slowly building towards more and more building blocks so that people can pick and choose kind of like what works best for their use case. Yeah.
I see that. Thank you. And PG, do you have any question?
Yeah. Could you give a brief overview of the whole Waku family? Because actually you have multiple projects running your techs and tools. And I'm also curious about other applications and protocols that maybe showed an interest in start using Waku.
Yes, I can try and do that. I have to say that we are often surprised to hear about people who are using Waku without us knowing. So we also want to invite people, if you are doing some cool stuff over Waku, please let us know. Some example of projects that are using Waku, and that's part of the Waku family, would be Status, of course. So Status is building a new kind of community app, which works kind of similar to how Discord servers work, but in a completely decentralized, privacy-preserving manner. So we're very excited about that. They're quite an advanced stage there. They're building on Waku. We have Railgun. We love Railgun, and we believe Railgun loves us as well. So if you know Railgun, they're using Waku for communication between their users and their relayers. So the relays are the ones that actually submit the transactions to the chain on the user's behalf. And they use Waku to broadcast fees from the relayers and also to actually communicate the transactions and the responses to the transactions. We have the graph. The graph is using Waku as the communication layer between their indexes, so called GraphCast. So it's an optional communication layer between indexes. It's called GraphCast. I'm missing an important one here. What am I missing? Wait, I have.
I'm quite excited.
XMTP?
XMTP. That's true. XMTP is using Waku. I was just that's an important one I'm missing. XMTP is using Waku as their internal network. So they have a slightly different setup. They have Waku set up as a private network, but they're using Waku for the internal network.
Yeah, we have a question here, and if you expect that a lot of projects in the future will implement Waku in the future, and maybe as an extension to this question, what is preventing other protocols right now in implementing Waku right now? Or...
Yes, so I think yes, we are expecting many protocols to use it. We are in conversation with a lot of groups of people who are interested. I won't front run all of these conversations because I know it can be quite early stage, but we really believe we are doing the groundwork, the kind of principled groundwork here that allows applications to build in a principled manner. And if we do it right, it's difficult to build public goods infrastructure. We're building a public goods project. But if you don't compromise on your principles here, you're building something that is useful. And I think more and more projects are seeing this, and they're reaching out to us, and we're reaching out to them, and they're kind of seeing this important service that Waku can provide. So yes, we do see that in the future. I think one thing that has prevented projects from building on Waku in the past is exactly because we are a little bit uncompromising when it comes to things like decentralization and not taking shortcuts here to make DOS protection easier. DOS protection specifically was a big hurdle for people and has been for decentralized communication. So we're very excited now that we will be launching what we are calling the Waku network, which is in a way combining all of these aspects that we've built in a principled way to build a public network with spam protection in the base layer using RMN. And we expect to see a whole lot more people join the Waku family and project.
I just wanted to add that we are expecting this to happen right after ETHRome, because obviously that's the best place to talk about Waku, and everyone will get super excited, I'm sure.
What do you mean?
Absolutely.
During ETHRome.
I mean, obviously, after ETHRome, because 90% of the projects being hacked at ETHRome will for sure include Waku. So
Yes.
it's gonna
Yeah,
be
also because we are having the graph, privacy scaling exploration, so different projects that you already work with are coming.
Yeah.
Technical people from their team are coming, so we are going to be together. I'm so excited to see what will come up. Also because it's something very good and important to us that different players as Waku are providing follow-up grants for the best use of their technologies. So projects that will be delivered, it's something that can grow and become something, huge potentially. So I mean, hackers have more incentive to further develop, and this is something special, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And quite thrilled to welcome you. If I'm not wrong, many people from Waku and Status are coming, both ETHRome and Web3 Privacy Now meet up. So I think that something crazy will happen. We have enough time to do that.
I think so too.
Yeah. And I had a question, maybe not so related, technically speaking, to the protocol, but like in general, for what regards building public goods, because eventually you are delivering a platform which is going to be a significant infrastructural change that generates tons of positive externalities for other protocols to build on top of Waku, right? And so like my question to you is, in the development of your idea and undertaking the protocol first approach, right? Did you encounter any difficulty in hiring devs or like pushing this idea just because it was driven just to deliver a public good and just not for revenues?
Yes and no, to answer your question. I think the no part is that we really try to select for people that share the vision, right? So principles are very important for us. And I'm very lucky to be part of, I think this is quite rare in the development community, to be part of a protocol and a team that has a strong set of principles. And this really plays a role in our design process, right? So we think about these things and we talk about it. We talk about the ethics of what we're doing. We talk about the principles of what we're building. And that naturally attracts that type of people that share these kind of principles, right? So I think at a very early stage, you can, during say an interview process, you can determine if people share the vision or not. The yes part is, yes, you do get people who are concerned about this kind of this approach, right? So I have had the questions where people were worried, but okay, how would funding work? How would how sure are we in terms of the foundations on which we are building, that it will last for a long time? But generally, I think because we have such a strong principled approach, and even before we start talking to people, they usually read through our principles already, or we have principles published. You tend to get only people that already share the vision from the beginning. Yeah, and I'm happy to say that we have a group of very diverse developers from very diverse backgrounds with very diverse ideas about development and about the world, but that share these core principles in terms of what we want to build. And that is a very beautiful and rare thing. Yeah.
All right, that's super cool. Yeah. PG, do you have any question?
Well, we have a question from Darf. If you wanna make it public.
Yeah, maybe it's more related to the hackathon, but yeah, we can anticipate. Yeah.
Just want to say on Hanno's words that I think this is very special and important to put principles first and to remember why crypto has been developed in first place. And remember that these powerful tools, if we don't stick to core values and principles, layer zero is, and it will always be the people. So I think it's very important to break the loop and try to do something special with these powerful technologies instead of just reiterating the same kind of money loops. And this is what I think it's probably the first only one. I mean, the first reason why Status and Jared has always been in my top. I mean, top of notch people, top OGs in the space, because he's been always so focused on this, which is not easy in a world that works in another way, in another manner. And the fact that he and you all guys managed to go on this way and stay true to these core principles, and like didn't I don't know how to say, but spend so much on marketing or try to have your application used for as many people as you could in the past. But you waited for the right moment. You waited for having the right stage of development, and this is something very that I think we all appreciate. Sorry for the long speech. If you can,
No, I appreciate it. I agree. This is something very valuable and rare. Yeah.
Yeah, and like if we want to move to the hackathon questions, it was Darf who was asking if there is any use case that you think that could be from which someone who could build an hackathon idea or a protocol in general, because ETHRome is this playground where hackers can hack the ideas via Waku.
I can say I have one, but I'm gonna save it for hackathon where I hack. Sorry. One thing that I always come back to when we start talking about use cases and examples of usage of Waku is that, as Hanno said, every time people start asking about Waku, it always goes back. Well, it usually goes back to chat applications. So whenever someone asks about Waku and you say web pre-messaging, they come back to like, oh, so I can use it to have like a support chat bubble on my website, and then people can chat on my website. Absolutely. It's yes, that's where Waku came from originally, with status and like being a chat application. But we want to move away from that to be only a chat-based application. I mean, the general protocols are designed to be generalized messaging. So if you think about projects, do not think about chat, think about other things. I keep coming back to like, in my past, I was using various workflow managers, right? So like, can I use Waku to build like an event-based workflow manager, something like Kafka, in a decentralized manner, instead of running Kafka streams myself and Kafka infrastructure myself? Can I just use Waku and then various nodes connecting and listening for various topics and various messages? It'd be interesting idea to do something like that. I had an idea in the past for something like a privacy social network, as in you would broadcast your general location and other people can see that and broadcast their location, and then you can meet if you want, if you have some people with common interests around you. Maybe that would be something to build, especially with privacy in mind at a hackathon like ETHRome. And there are definitely other, I would still like to see some fun game being built on top of Waku, some multiplayer game being built on top of Waku, pushing the limits of the game and of the network itself. So we'll see what people come up with, I guess.
Yeah, I've seen also that in your documentation there is also a dedicated section for use cases, and so I want to ask you if you have any generic guideline or any also boilerplate or starter kit for developers in interacting with Waku, because this could be very useful also for hackers at ETHRome.
Yeah, so I'll just say that I think Sasha will probably show you the JS Waku examples repo, which is full of good stuff if you want to do some web development, some browser-based application. It's a good place to start. And I would also like to mention bounties, because we have bounties for general people coming to Waku trying to play around with it. So if you go, I'll show the repo in a bit, but it's like if you go to GitHub waku.org/bounties, there are a bunch of bounties, and we are adding more. We're just for playing around with Waku, building something cool, something fun, relatively easy and quick. You can get some financial reward for that. And that's outside of any particular hackathon. This is just generally running there and there are various technologies that you need to include to be eligible. But it's definitely something to that might be interesting for people if they just want to play around with it and they can't find motivation, which is usually my problem, to find motivation to try new technology if there is nothing behind it, like I need it for a project, or I want to use it for a project, or maybe there is a financial reward.
Yeah,
I
indeed.
want
We
to
have
add
a
here
question.
is that there are two things that can be done. Is that you can build for Waku or you can build with Waku, and both are pretty much appreciated. But answering the following question is it possible to use projects that use Waku for bounties and stuff? It's desirable to use Waku directly. And please check bounties, as Pascal said. This is very appreciated. But for ideas, come up with anything crazy you have in mind. We are eager to see what you can do.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think it's a clear answer to the question. So, yeah, I don't know, Sasha, if you want to share the repo with the.
I will actually do better. I will run a demo with showing
that's
how
right.
to do
That's right.
something. But I will conclude today's session after Pascal.
All right.
Okay, I can go now if you want. I'll just run through very quickly because we had good discussions, and I don't want to waste time in me presenting stuff. But I'll run quickly through. If you are maybe not right now interested in building something on top of Waku, but you just want to support Waku itself, support the network, the good way to do it is to run a Waku node. And Hanno mentioned the backbone of the whole Waku ecosystem of protocols is Relay. And that's kind of what we aim for, is as many people running Relay protocol as possible, because that means the good decentralization, privacy, anonymity, and all these features, right? So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll just show you a bunch of ways to run Waku node. And then I'll show you how I can amazingly run a Waku node. So first way to run a Waku node would be from binaries. So we are releasing on GitHub, and I will be talking specifically about Waku, which is the reference implementation. So we have just last week done release V020, and then obviously, as usual, you can find the build binaries here. We have binaries for AMD64 Linux, and then for both AMD64 and ARM64 for macOS. So you can just unpack this and run it from command line, which is great. But if it crashes or your laptop crashes or something, obviously that does not make it very persistent. So the way we, as a kind of Status and Waku core contributors, overcome that is that we usually use Waku Compose, which is another repo under Waku organization. And this repository holds Docker Compose. If you're familiar with Linux containers and Docker, you are probably familiar with Docker Compose, but it's generally just a manifest describing potentially complex applications and being able to run that application with a single command, which is Docker Compose up. As you can see, the manifest is relatively complex, and it's also because it comes with integrated Postgres database, because Waku, one of the protocols is called store, and it caches the messages for some amount of time in case some of those light nodes or adaptive nodes are not available or connected at all times. They can query from store node. So it uses Postgres to store the messages, and it also comes with monitoring. So Grafana and Prometheus are the tools often used for monitoring instances and services. So we use that too, and we have a very nice dashboard for that. So let me just jump into terminal. I'm in the Waku Compose directory. You can see what's the content. It's the same as with the GitHub website. And all I need to do here is run this Docker Compose app. I wouldn't need to do these other things here, but I will, because we haven't updated Waku Compose to the latest release yet. So I'm overriding the image, the Docker image that it's using. And I'm also providing a node key, which every single Waku node has a key which can be generated or provided from externally. So it stays the same on the restarts, and the key is then translated into peer ID as per usual with lib peer-to-peer, which is an underlying library under the Waku. So I'm just going to run this, and it's going to start a bunch of containers here, and then it's going to start downloading stuff for Grafana dashboards and things like that. So I'm just going to let it run for a while. I mentioned the bounty, and this is one that my colleague keeps coming back and asks us to promote it as much as possible. So if you see me here running the Waku node using Docker Compose, it's awesome, but talking to that node is not completely straightforward, because you need to use either REST API or JSON RPC. And what we would love is for someone to build a nice front end so that you can control that node easily when you spin it up on your local machine. It would be great, and it would help with presenting Waku and with newcomers coming to Waku. So that's something you can also probably build as part of the hackathon if you want to. I believe that my node should be up now. So if I reload Grafana and I go to the Waku monitoring dashboard here, you can see that something is happening there. Let me just, I'll just refresh manually. So we can see a bunch of data here. So I have 7 connected peers. Awesome. 7 other machines, 7 other Waku nodes are connected. I have discovered 22 nodes. Perfect. I have some peers in my store as well, serving various protocols. And I have some messages coming through. I have 6 messages per second coming through my node, relaying them. They are available on all those light protocols. So I could connect my browser application to this node and immediately start pulling from filter or pushing through light pushing and things like that. We also have dashboard for the Postgres, so you can monitor your Postgres instance under leveraged by the Waku node. If you do not want to run using Docker Compose, what can you do? There is, in the true sense of decentralizations, there is something called tap node. Let me just search for the website a little better. Tap node is a way for you to run various Web3 infrastructure applications at home, usually. And it's basically a powerful machine that you buy. It has a marketplace, so you can easily install applications. And one of those applications on the marketplace is Waku. So you just go there into the marketplace, into the App Store, and install Waku, and you are now part of Waku Network. If you don't want to buy that node because they are quite expensive, you can also go to Akash Network, which is a decentralized cloud with various providers across the world, built on top of Cosmos SDK. And just recently, we have added Waku into the awesome Akash repo. So you can go here, you can pick the deployment, and then there is how to deploy, including all the various protocols that you may or may not need. As I mentioned, you can communicate with the node. We wanted to show you with Sasha some cool demo where I post a message from command line to my node, and then it shows up in his web UI. But I think I broke something, so I can't do it right now. But what I can do, I can show you that if I post this JSON RPC call to my node, which if you're familiar with Ethereum and other blockchains, you're familiar with JSON RPC probably, this debug call will return my address of my node, including the peer ID, which is based on the node key that I provided. So there is a way how to communicate locally with the node, or you can obviously use the Waku network itself to send messages to the node, even through the other nodes in the network. Yeah, I think that's it. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them with regards to this, or if you want to see anything else from what I've talked about. And if not, then I'll just pass it to Sasha for more demos.
Yeah, it has been great, actually. Yeah, I think this live session was super cool. Yeah, and
yeah, I'm not so technical, so I don't want to waste people's time with my questions. But
yeah, just ping me.
Yeah,
just ping me, and
Yeah.
I charge very little as a consulting fee, so it's okay.
Okay. So maybe, I don't know, Sasha, if you want to go ahead and present. Yeah.
Should be there. Yeah. So you see. So
Yeah.
what I'm going to present you is that as a hacker, you might want to do something with Waku. And I will be showing what you can do with GS and Waku. For that, we have a couple of entry points you can use depending on level of your proficiency. And there are two packages that can be used for that. There is the package which is called Waku Create App. And this package is a utility package, which is a CLI to help you to bootstrap a basic application on your site as a hacker. And what it does, it just takes one of the examples that we developed and unfolds it onto your local system. So if you want to see what examples are we have, so you can just visit examples.waku.org, and this will redirect you to the repository with examples. There's a folder with them, and these are the examples that we support. So as there is one example which showcases how RLN can be used, which Hanno mentioned, which is our remedy for fighting spam. And there are also some protocols showcased here. There is a bunch of stuff. I will showcase you on the one example, which is the chat, and which is more interesting and exciting one. So for that, I will use the Waku Create app. But all examples are hosted, and if you want to visit them, you can go to examples.waku.org/and name of the example, and then you just have it there. You can use Waku already from there. So I wrote it here. For that, I need a console opened. So we will use npx. There are commands. There is a helper in on the npm page. So Waku create up. So here is a help menu of Waku. What can be done with this? Basically, it accepts only one parameter, which is the name of the folder where you want to unfold your some application. It will be a chat application. So I will just name it as a chat application, and now it asks me which template I want to use for this application. As I said, we will use on the web chat for now. It will do everything for us. It will install npm packages inside. It will instantiate Git repository inside so that we can put it to GitHub or whatever. So that actually pretty much it. And I can start hacking with Waku already. So if I will just go to the chat app, it's already there. There it is. So this is the application. So it's ready to go. We are ready to go actually. So here I started it. It will take a second or two. And once it's done, it will run, it will open in my Chrome. So here is the web chat application I mentioned. What we can do with this is just send messages to each other. We also use it for dogfooding some functionalities we develop. Oh, as you see, Václav sent me a message, probably from his node, maybe not, but yes. We also use it for dogfooding some functionality. So there is a lot of stuff you can, as a hacker, dig into and see and experiment with. And let me show you a bit of code. There are two main packages used. This is a React application. And do you see it? I can zoom in a bit. So there are two main dependencies, which is Waku React and Waku CDK. These are two packages which are entry points to Waku as a JavaScript set of libraries. CDK is the main one, but it should be used for advanced stuff. So if you have already knowledge, you can do a lot of things with this. It's not restricted in any way possible. Whereas React application, React library provides only limited set of things you can do with for your React application. So I will show you a bunch of stuff. So there are things that you want to do, and these things are mostly like retrieve messages, send messages, and communicate with the network somehow. For communicating a network, we should create an instance of Waku object, and for that, Waku React provides you a provider for it. You can configure it, and here we are asking to give us support for 3 main protocols, which are light protocols, essentially store for retrieving messages from the past, filter to subscribe to the messages in right now, and light push to send them. And default bootstrap means that we will use a fleet of nodes already somewhere in the network. So what web chat application will do here, it will discover some peer, it will connect to it automatically, and it will start doing everything. So you as developer don't even need to think about it if you use this property. So since you want to do something with messages, there is a concept of encoding messages and decoding messages so that network understands and what to do with them. And for that, you need to create an encoder and decoder. React library provides you with this, and there is a component for it, a provider. So, and there are a bunch of hooks which are fancy right now and give you opportunity to do things, such as there is a hook for subscribing to messages, filter hook. It accepts some parameters, and it will just return your messages, and it will be updating them into your web application. There is also storage. Use store messages means that we will use store protocol underneath, and it will just keeps getting messages from the store. And if you want to send them somewhere, you can just use the hook for it as well, which is called light push, and it will just give you a method. You can call it, and that's it. It will send a message to the network. Everything is super abstract. But if you are very proficient, you can go on directly to Waku CDK. It requires a bit of knowledge. You shouldn't be afraid of using it in any way possible, and we are very welcome to help you to understand and grasp it. Underneath, it uses libp2p, and it gives you opportunity to configure nodes in ways you want to. Like, let's say if you bootstrapped a node as Václav showed you previously, you can take its address and use it for your web application. By using Waku CDK, you can do this. You can also do this with Waku React. So yeah, I can conclude on this. It's easy to do, and feel free to jump into our Waku organization and see any repository we have. So,
yeah, just a quick question. Like for what regards the hooks, are the hooks directly accessible also via the software development kit, or just in the dependency of Waku React? They are so nice, and so you can. I mean, like, do you need to? Can you access to the hook directly from the SDK, or the SDK allows you to create the hook in the way Waku React allows you to get access to that?
So the hooks are just abstraction developed by me, and underneath it uses CDK directly. And you can develop your hooks as well. It just those hooks that we developed, they already have some tests on it, and so they are more or less reliable, so that you won't hit some edge cases where your web application re-renders and you have like Waku recreated. So of course stuff will be broken, and it's very hard to debug sometimes. So
yeah, can imagine. Yeah, I mean, it was super cool actually.
Cool.
And so super also helpful for hackers who are going to see the live, and they will be, oh, these guys are doing this stuff, and so there will be Sasha typing and helping them asynchronously.
Yeah.
And
Well,
very helpful session.
Just to mention, we also have a workshop on Friday, right? At ETHRome, where Sasha will present this in real. So that's also something we should mention if you are interested in participating in hackathon, or even without that, using Waku. It may make sense for you to come to the hackathon. We'll iterate over many details, in greater details that we could hear, and it will be hands-on, I believe. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, thank
okay,
you guys. Yeah. Is there anything you wanna add, or we'll see you in Rome?
All
I mean,
those-
not all of you, unfortunately, but we will have a chance.
Yeah, so we'll see you in Rome in spirit, at least, and many of us in real life as well. We're very excited about that. And thanks for the very interesting conversation and the opportunity.
Yeah, it has been our pleasure, actually. You guys are super cool, and Waku is amazing. And actually, I'm so grateful that you showed also practical examples, because I bet this stuff will be extremely useful for hackers. And really excited to have you in ETHRome, and see you in October.
Looking forward.
Yay. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
All
See
right.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.